Welcome everybody. Here we are in our first Shaar HaBitachon from this Sefer. I am very, very excited. I hope everybody has it already. I hope so. There's one here if you need one. Okay, so as you'll see throughout this whole shiur, that my book is very much written into, and I actually had a farbrengen a few times with people about putting stuff in their books, and I'll give you some background. I come from a family where we care for books a lot, and we just love books and we care for them a lot. And I was never taught, I was always taught not to write in my books because that, and then I was untaught that when I was in high school, and all my teachers made us write in our books. And I actually have found a good balance. So I wanted to share that because as we go through the shiur, I think many times it's very easy to just have a book and read it and it stays in the pages, and it just kind of like, yeah, we finished our HaBitachon, and that's where the information goes. And when you farbrengen with your sefer, sometimes it brings out a really deep connection, and it brings out a lot of closeness to what you're actually learning, and then you make it real. I actually still have a book from high school where I really farbrengened into it, and from time to time I look back and I see my growth through the pages. So again, it's just an idea, but throughout everything that we're going to be discussing, we really want to we want this to be real, which begins our introduction, which is that I want to be clear about what is our goal. Our goal in this class is to live, and that's why we called it living with bitachon. We want this to change our lives. We want this to permeate us in every single place in our lives, to the point where we'll see in today's reading where is it? Here, from a letter from the Rebbe, quote, "We must know that faith and trust cannot merely remain in our thoughts. Rather, they must permeate the totality of our lives." So we're not learning Shaar HaBitachon in order to get concepts. We're not learning Shaar HaBitachon in order to have an intellectual abstract discussion. This is not a pill poll where we go back and forth. This person says this and that person says that, and the quote is over here, and my goal is not that. There are other classes who have that, but our goal in this class is for it to be lived and for it to be permeated in our lives. So I'm going to try my hardest to keep the flow going. This sefer, as I'm sure you can see, has a lot of commentary, and sometimes the commentary is there to bring out, a comparison, or different opinions have different viewpoints, or this pasuk comes from da da da, and not necessarily is it leading to the flow. And so then we're gonna get sidetracked in that concept, and then sidetracked in that concept, and then we come out of shiur like I learned a bunch of random stuff. So one of the reasons why last time we did bitachon shiur, we did it from this booklet, is because it's a straight up but it is exactly just that. It's as if you're reading the book without any stops, basically. It does have a bit of commentary in the bottom, but very, very little. So what I've done here is that I have picked out which commentary lead to helping us live with bitachon, as opposed to getting us off onto like an intellectual discussion. So that's one of the concepts I wanted to discuss. Another piece I want to share is that I want to try to keep the flow going. So this is not necessarily a dicta class. This is also not necessarily a translation class. I want us to live with the concepts, and if you'd like, you can totally read the words in the Hebrew in the original. And I actually, one of the things I will suggest is to get a chavrusa so that you can learn it with throughout the week. But for the sake of keeping the concept straight for us to really like go and get an idea, so I'm going to read in English so that we really get through as much information as possible. Okay, with all that said, I felt it was very incredibly appropriate today's Hayomim. For anyone who watches the recording, it might not be today's Hayomim for you, but it is today's Hayomim for us. So the 29th of Sivan, the Hayomim goes as such. According to the teachings of Chassidus, divine service entails training oneself to perceive Hashem's hashgacha pratis, how in his goodness he continually renews the world and all its created beings with his particular providence, and how this alone constitutes the continued life and existence of all created beings. Bitachon can't begin unless we know that Hashem is taking care of us. Unless we know that Hashem is literally in our lives and running every aspect of our lives, we can't trust him, which actually it's one of the pieces that we're going to discuss in the introduction to the Sefer. The author of the Sefer actually says that you have to be able to know that Hashem is in every single part of your life. And not only that, but we have to see his hashgacha pratis, that he's doing it on purpose. He has a purpose in what he does in our lives, and it's not just, by chance, by luck. I happen to be here. We don't happen to be anywhere. We were put exactly where we're meant to be. And once we know that, then we can begin. Okay, so I did a bit of research on the author because I think that's something that makes an impact on our understanding of the book. And his name was Rabbeinu Bachaya ben Yosef ibn Pekuda. So they actually don't know, we actually don't know his birth or his yahrzeit or anything other than the fact that it's around 1021. He was one of the most outstanding personalities in what we call the golden era of Jewish history in Spain. And he was such a heilige yid that at that time, they actually named him HaChassid. They called him the pious one because he was so kind and he was such a upstanding tzaddik. He was one of the greatest scholars, and at the same time, we actually know very little about his life. We do know that he was a dayan, he was a judge in Saragossa, Spain. And what he's most famous for is that he wrote Chavas Alavavos. So as we'll see, here it says Shaar HaBitachon. So it's actually the fourth section, which means Chavas Alavavos is actually a 10-section sefer, and this happens to be the fourth. The one previous is Shaar HaVaidas Hashem, which it's how to do a Vaidas Hashem, which we're going to discuss what that means. And he basically said, you can't do your Vaidas Hashem unless you have trust in Hashem. So that's why it's the fourth out of 10. And it was originally written in Arabic. It was later translated into Hebrew by the famous translator, Rabbi Yehuda ibn Tibbon, approximately in the year 4940. And in his introduction, he actually explained why he wrote the Sefer. He said that there are many, many, many svarim. I mean, you guys all know there's tons of svarim in Torah, but there wasn't really a Sefer that spoke about our heart. There's halacha about tzitzis. There's halacha about maida'ani. There's halacha about, there's understanding at the point, whatever, whether it's Kabbalah or whatnot, of the deeper end. But we didn't have, especially at that time, any knowledge or any sefer about how to really affect our heart. We're supposed to love Hashem. We're supposed to have yira, ava. It's like basics. It's actually part of the mitzvahs, and yet there was nothing written for it. So he actually decided, and that's why he wrote Chavas Alavavos, the duties of the heart, because this has to do with our heart. And so that's the introduction on that. Now, there once was a man, which I'm sure you guys know this story very, very, very well. It's pretty famous in Lubavitch, and his name was Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb. He actually moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and he was starting his career, or he's starting to work towards his career in psychology. And at one point, he was having a really, really hard time, and he was struggling in his avodas Hashem. He was struggling. He had a lot of questions. And he decided to call 770 and see if he could send in a message to the Rebbe. So he called, and one of the Maskirim answers, and he says he was actually a bit embarrassed about the questions he was about to ask, and like the fact that he was struggling. So when they asked him, who is this? Like, can I take your name? He said, a Jew in Maryland. And then he went on to ask his questions. Suddenly he hears the Rebbe's voice on the line, which means the Rebbe had heard. There was times when the Rebbe would have, like, he would connect into the call, so he could also hear from his office. And he heard the Rebbe's voice, where he said, there's a Jew in Maryland with whom he can speak, and his name is Weinreb. And he was shocked because his name was Weinreb. And he answered on the phone, he said, well, my last name is Weinreb. And the Rebbe took a second and he said, if that's the case, he should know that sometimes one needs to speak to oneself. And it's very, very, very powerful, this story, because many times we go to a shir, or we want to learn something to change our lives. And information in of itself is helpful. It's a tool. But we have to speak to ourselves in order to change our lives. So everything we learn here is going to be a tool. But the way you apply it, the way you live with it, that has to be spoken to yourself. That has to be a farbrengen and an opportunity to think about what you're struggling with in life, or what you're going through in life, and say, how do I apply this to my life? Does that make sense? So this is not a suddenly magically bitachon's going to be infused. You're going to eat it, and suddenly it's like, woo, magic pill, you took it, you want it, that's it. It's a process of bringing it in, which is actually the basis of Chabad. Chachma, Bina, and Das, right? Chachma is what we're going to do. We're going to learn it. Bina is when you take a moment and you really think about it. And that's why I'm lovingly encouraging everybody to find the chavrusa, even if you don't have time to sit down and read it inside, but just call that person or send them a voice and say, hey, these are some concepts that I learned this week, so that you process the information. And then when it comes out of your mouth, it shows that what you've understood. And then the last, which I personally think is the most important, is the das. Das is when you take a moment and you say, what am I living with? What am I struggling with? How does this apply? Okay, so that's our goal. That's our goal. Before we start, we want to know that this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to live with bitachon. Okay, all that said, let's do this. We're going to open up on page 2. Another aspect to this is, just I forgot to mention, if you'd like, you can also keep a journal. Sometimes journaling about these concepts really helps us live with it. Okay, so page 2, which essentially on paper is like 30. It just keeps going and going and going. Yes. Yeah. I strongly suggest, especially now it's Gimel Tamuz coming up, if you want some Shabbos reading, the introduction, the foreword to the Sefer is beautiful. Really, really replete with amazing stuff. So if you want to do that on Shabbos. Also, if you don't yet have a Sefer, you can absolutely purchase it tonight. It's $22. Okay, let's do this. Okay, we're on page 2. And then it says, in the introduction to Shaar HaBitachon, the gate of trust, the author discusses the benefits of having bitachon, trust in Hashem, brings a person both in Torah and in worldly matters, right? So not only is bitachon just like you're going to walk around floating on a holy, holy cloud, but in reality, it's going to bring you actual benefits in your worldly matters, in your gashmias. In total, he lists 5 Torah benefits and 5 worldly benefits. Okay. On placing our trust in Hashem alone, author's introduction. The author begins his introduction to Shaar HaBitachon by explaining the connection between this gate and the preceding gate, Shaar HaBitachon, the gate of the service of Hashem. He explains that the reason why he placed Shaar HaBitachon immediately after Shaar HaBitachon is that having trust in Hashem is paramount in order to be a true servant of Hashem. So now we're going to get into it. Having previously discussed in the previous gate the obligation to accept the service of Hashem, I have seen it to be appropriate to now explain that which is most necessary for a person who wishes to be a servant of Hashem, and that is to rely on him in all his matters. For by doing so, there will be great benefits, both in Torah matters and in worldly matters. Okay, so we're going to take a moment. Not all, as I said in the beginning, not every single asterisk is related to how we want to live with Chassidus. So I've chosen to skip some of them, but we will begin with the asterisk after most necessary. So where it says most necessary, Rabbi Avram, son of Rambam, writes that trust in Hashem, may he be exalted and blessed, is one of the choicest character traits we can have. It is in fact one of the foundations of Torah, and therefore we don't find anyone who argues against its necessity, right? So we said necessary, everyone agrees that trusting in Hashem is necessary. Number 1. In his commentary to Proverbs, the Vilna Gaon writes, trust is a general commandment that protects us from transgressing any of the commandments. So not only is it so bare and basic because nobody disagrees that we need it, but in reality, this is the mitzvah that leads to all the other mitzvahs. We make sure if we trust in Hashem and we know that he's taking care of us, then why would we do anything else? If we trust that Hashem is going to give us parnasa, why would we cheat somebody else in business? Like, why would we? If we trust that we're exactly where we're meant to be, so why would we, do something out of line? Does that make sense? From a letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we must know that faith and trust cannot merely remain in our thoughts, as I said earlier. Rather, they must permeate the totality of our lives. The first step of faith is that Hashem controls the world. If he can care for billions of people, we can be sure that in regard to personal matters, we will see the fulfillment of the promise stated in the pasuk, I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain and deliver you. Okay, so let's take a moment. You guys hear me? I just hear myself in the... Okay, great, because I just hear the AC. So let's take a moment. You can close your eyes if you want to. Picture one of your favorite locations where you travel to for vacation. Now, picture whether it's sunny or whether it's indoors. Picture if you're there alone, if you're there with a friend, with family. And now take a moment and look around in the place where you are. Are there people there? Maybe there's a worker, maybe there's somebody who's giving out, I don't know, selling tickets to something, or maybe it's a cleaning crew. I'm not sure exactly where you are. And now look at that person and think about their lives. That person has a mother. That person has a father. That person goes home and puts their head, his or her head, on a pillow that night. And they have worries. They have bills to pay. They have bank accounts. Hopefully, I guess, I don't know where you traveled, but most places have bank accounts. And that person's every moment, every breath, every detail is directed by Hashem. I don't know where you traveled, but it wasn't just here. You clearly went somewhere out of this room. And that person who you pictured in your mind, literally every ounce of their being is controlled by Hashem, and it's put and it's organized, it's cared for by Hashem. And many times we forget because we're so in our own existence. We have our lives, our struggles, our worries, our financial struggles, right? But that person is literally breathing in this same moment. They are breathing, and their life is continuing just like ours. It's funny to think about it. But when you think about it in that way, you realize that Hashem truly controls everything. And that was just one person you pictured in some faraway land that you like to visit. But every single aspect of our world is controlled. Every blade of grass, every breath somebody takes, every worry that they struggle with, every relationship they have with their personal parents. And when you know that, and suddenly you see the greatness of Hashem, suddenly you can appreciate that. And this is what the Rabbi just said, that the first step in faith is that Hashem controls the world. If he can care for the billions of people, we can be sure that in regard to personal matters, which is us, we will see the fulfillment of the promise stated in the pasuk, I have made you, meaning us. Think about every single one of you. Hashem made you. I will carry you. He will carry you. I will sustain and deliver you. Isn't that comforting? The same way Hashem takes care of that random person in your mind's eye, Hashem takes care of you. And that's the beginning of HaBitachon. That's the beginning of it all. Okay, back to the regular text. We're going to discuss where it says, for by doing so, there will be great benefits, both in Torah matters and in worldly matters. And this part is actually very, it's a very beautiful message. So the last asterisk, which means worldly matters, is on page number 3 on the bottom. Torah matters and in worldly matters. The author continues to explain the benefits of our relationship with Hashem when we truly trust in him. In attributing the power of trust to all areas of life, the author is including every type of person, whether their main pursuit is wealth and materialism or a pious ascetic lifestyle. Trust in Hashem will be beneficial. So we're seeing that bitachon isn't just for your holy aspect in life. Like, oh, the more bitachon I have, the more kavanah I'll have in my davening. And not only is it in kavanah in your davening, but it's actually in your parnasa. It's actually in your interpersonal relation. Oh, look, I can see this. It's actually in your interpersonal relationships. It's actually in your gashmias, your real health, your absolute body. It really makes an impact. Now we're going to see how. Okay, let's go back 1 second. Yeah, here we go. We're on page 3 still. If a person places his trust in Hashem, it will be easier for him to act in accordance with the ways of Torah. It will also be easier for him to acquire his materialistic needs, as well as the author explains. The author now gives 5 ways in which bitachon is beneficial to Torah matters. Okay, so we're going to discuss 5 in the Torah, and then afterwards we're going to discuss 5 in our Gashmias lives. Tranquility. The first benefit is that bitachon causes a person to be free from worry, allowing him to devote his energy to serving Hashem. So on the one hand, this first one is technically on our spiritual matters, but let's be honest, how many of us, don't raise your hand because I know the whole room, has at some point or another in your lives been so stressed out or worried that you couldn't sleep, or you woke up extra early, or you struggled with your eating habits, right? So on the one hand, worry is the spiritual, it's the first one on the spiritual list, but on the other hand, it's really our gashmias. It really affects us. Worry, anxiety, all of these things affect us in gashmias. Okay, page 4. Among the Torah benefits is tranquility of the soul, which is free of worry as a result of his reliance on Hashem, just as a servant is bound to place his trust in his master. So let's read the asterisk. Reliance on Hashem. Here on the bottom left. Tranquility of the soul as a result of his reliance on Hashem. Trust in Hashem has its own inherent benefit. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that a person must pray for his trust to be strengthened, because when Hashem desires to punish, he begins by removing that person's trust in him. Interesting. This can be understood in the light of a statement by Rabbi Shmuel, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, known as the Rebbe Maharash. A Jew is never deficient in sustenance. Rather, he is deficient in his trust in Hashem. Take a moment to let that sink. You have the exact amount of money that you're meant to have. And you will receive the exact amount of money that you're meant to receive. And our struggle, our worry about parnasa is not necessarily the fact that we're deficient in parnasa. Instead, we're just deficient in our trust in Hashem. That's a biggie. Just putting that out there. There is an abundance of sustenance prepared for every Jew. However, if a person is deficient in trust, the sustenance, thank you, does not reach him. The Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that bitachon is like a faucet. When we have it, the faucet is open and our blessings pour through. However, when we lack it, the faucet is closed. Whoa. So basically, more bitachon, more parnasa. Okay. The next asterisk, which is right below it, is a servant is bound to place his trust in his master. The first benefit of bitachon when regards to religious life is a state of tranquility, which allows us to dedicate ourselves to the service of Hashem. The author explains this with the parable of a servant who must rely on his master to take care of all of his needs, and is only concerned with his responsibility to his master. In a similar vein, as servants of Hashem, we trust that Hashem will take care of our needs, and we therefore only concern ourselves with the fulfillment of our duties towards him. So let's put it this way. A servant who is set, he's being taken care of by his master feeds him, his master clothes him, his master gives him a place to live. In Torah law, he actually also takes care of his wife and his children. So he's literally taken care of in every full extent. So if the servant is stressing out about his food and his clothing and that doesn't make sense. Like, the master's taking care of it. Why should we waste our time worrying about that? Instead, we should spend our time doing the work that we're meant to be doing. So that's that's where this mashal works for us. We are Hashem's servants. We are here, Avdim of Hashem. And we know that Hashem is going to take care of us. We know that Hashem is going to give us every single thing we need exactly at the time that we need it. And when doing so, why should we worry about it? There's no point in stressing out about it. Hashem's going to take care of us. I'll tell a story, which is actually a bit comical, but most people go, ugh. So I recently had a wedding, and I was a big part of the wedding. My husband and I were the interferers, so we had to be there. And I ordered a gown, which I don't know if itself was a fun experience. I ordered a gown from a random website. It was pretty dangerous. I was like, oh my gosh, am I just chucking the money out the window? But took the risk anyway. It came out perfect. It was beautiful, absolutely stunning. I even took it to the seamstress, and she was so impressed. She's like, this is from China. So Baruch Hashem, it worked out beautifully. Then I drop it off, and she asked me, she said, come call me to pick it up the day before the wedding. I was like, okay, fine, beautiful. I call and I call and I call. Turns out that the day before the wedding was the Memorial Day. And she forgot to tell me, I guess, that they were closed Memorial Day. So then I call first thing in the morning, first Crown Heights time thing in the morning, AKA like 10:30 when they actually open. And I say, okay, this is the wedding's today. I really need this done by now. she said, really? That's so interesting. I can't, give me a second, 1 second. So she puts me on hold. It's like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, a few minutes. And then she comes back. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want to hold you in the line. I just need to go find it. I can't seem to find your gown. So I say, okay, I guess if you want, she's like, yeah, I'll just call you back. And I'm like, okay, what time? Because you know how things are. If I wait for her to call me back, love dafka, I'm gonna get a call back. So I said, fine, I'll call you back in about half an hour. It's like, perfect. So I call back in half an hour. She still can't find my gown. Nowhere to be found. She goes, I have the ticket in the system, but I can't find the actual dress. So she then asked me, can you please WhatsApp me a picture of the gown so I can look for it? Anyway, so Baruch Hashem, we were so lucky because Kabbalah's Panim was really early, unlike other Kabbalah's Panims, and I actually had to be there as an Unterfeer on time. For everyone who took the Shalom Bayis class, it actually meant on time at 3. And then so I sent her a WhatsApp, and then about an hour later, she sends me a WhatsApp. Wow, Baruch Hashem, I just found it. It had the wrong ticket on it. And I guess lucky for me, they hadn't done, or both sides, they hadn't done the alterations, which Baruch Hashem, because they would have done the other alterations that the ticket said, which wasn't the alterations that I needed done. But at the same time, this is 12:45 and Kabbalah's Panim is at 3. When exactly are you planning to do the alterations? So she messages me, she goes, yeah, call me at 2:30 to see if it's ready. So I responded, no, Kabbalah's Panim is at 3. I need it ready at 2:30, 2 o'clock earlier. Anyway, I go there at 2. She goes, hey, can you please just try it on? I'm like, what difference does it make? You don't have time to fix anything. Like, this is what it is. I'm going to wear it exactly how you just made it. And anyway, so throughout this entire time, I called my husband several times saying, so she can't find it. So she found it and it's not going to be ready till 2:30 and the wedding's at 3. So, like, and every single point, we both laugh at how many times we've been through this. Not necessarily the gown, not necessarily this seamstress, but we've been through this. And it always works out in the end. And a very famous quote that I credit to my husband because he's Baruch Hashem amazing. He always says, it's always going to work out. It's just a matter of how much you're going to stress out about it. And so throughout this whole time, I kept telling people the story, like, she lost my dress. Ah! And I tried my hardest to just laugh because there's nothing I can do about it. And Hashem is taking care of it. And at the end of the day, I'm going to not show up in pajamas. Like, I will be wearing something. So it was a tricky situation, and I'm sure if everybody takes a moment to think about it, you've all been in that situation in your own life, whether it's you're about to miss a flight, whether it's, oh, this thing has to be paid off and like, I don't necessarily have the full amount for it, or whatever it is in your life, we've all been there. And the question is, how much are we going to stress out about it?
Technically, sometimes if you're a little bit not stressed, but you can a little out of dress, or let's say you're like you really for the flight and try to like find like a fast way to get there. Like sometimes it's not.
It's a very good point.
Like sometimes you do more when you're feeling a little bit. I wouldn't say stress is pressure. Yeah, a little more pressure. Exactly. It's like if you're just like sitting back, but what if Hashem wanted you like to find another day?
When you could feel pressure, well,
yes.
No, you could. I'm saying I'm saying sometimes it's like confusing to be like, it's because of the idea like, like, are you like just like totally trying to be like, Hashem, we're like, how did that, but like, Hashem actually want.
Right. He actually, there's a whole section of it in here about that and how to find that balance. But just to give a little taste, the balance between how much to stress out about, or if we are anxious about it, so to speak, or if we're
like just a little, I don't think it's a good word because they're not like,
so that's what
I'm
that's
talking about a good quality of like
urgency. So yeah, and that's why I said, like, at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, I wouldn't really be showing up in my pajamas. Like, I do technically have 2 other gowns that I own. They're in my, you know what I mean? Like, I there's a balance between how you feel and how you act. Doing your stadlus is doing your stadlus. Doesn't mean you have to stress out about it. Right? So it's like it's duties of the heart. Chavas levavis. It's where, how do I feel here? It's not what I'm doing. I have to do it. He actually speaks about it, which is incredible because this is one of the main sfarm that like has such a strong, I think it's shocking for a lot of people, has such a strong push on like, you have to be involved in the world. Like, don't sit and be an ascetic, meditation in the top of a mountain. Like, you have to go work. How much do you work? How much do you stress out about work? What's about your parnasa? That's a different story. Does that make sense? It's doing the action as opposed to feeling the anxiety. Okay, so just to like get us back into the text, we are now discussing the first out of 5 of the benefits that we have from Bitachon. Okay. One second, we said that one. Oh yeah, okay. We just finished. We therefore only concern ourselves with fulfillment of our duties. Okay. Now we're gonna do, okay. Back into the main text, not into the commentary in the bottom, but back into the main text. In the next few paragraphs, the author will illustrate how only a person who relies on Hashem can be truly free of worry and have a peaceful state of mind. For a person who does not place his trust in Hashem, places his trust in an entity other than God. If a person does not place his trust in Hashem to take care of him, he is de facto placing his trust in an entity other than Hashem. That is wild. When we're not placing our trust in Hashem, we are automatically placing our trust in something or someone else. Like, take a moment.
A lot of us put our trust in ourselves sometimes. Like, we are our own, like.
I have to take care of myself. I have to.
We take too much care.
Yeah.
we have like control stuff. I just feel like a lot have control.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a word for it. I'm also not remember. Control freaks.
I just feel like most people want to feel control. You want to feel like control. You want to feel like, yeah, most people want to.
And then we take too much responsibility for the situation.
Yes. So here's how it.
Yeah, you're like, I'm so responsible for that. Well, I'm not going to control the situation. I'm going to leave part of it out of my hands. Like,
Especially because then when we leave it out of our hands, it's like, whose hands is it going to be on? That's a big part of it. Okay, so now let's read the asterisk on the bottom. An entity other than Hashem. There are those who, instead of trusting in Hashem, place trust in themselves and in their own abilities, in other people, for example, professionals, or in the constellations, waiting for their lucky star to strike. All this is contrary to the tranquility achieved by placing trust in Hashem alone. So we're trusting whatever expert it is, we're trusting that they have the salvation, which he discusses later on about like doctors and your boss and like where your money comes from, whatever, but putting our trust in them. From a letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you have 2 options. Number 1, until you see the fulfillment of the blessing, you can go about anxious that perhaps, heaven forbid, the blessing will not be fulfilled. Even after the blessing is fulfilled, you will continue to worry. Why did I have to waste so much energy worrying for nothing? I'm not going to do a raise of hands, but I'm sure we've all been there, where we go and we stress and we're going to miss the flight. We get to the flight, we're like, oh man, I should have enjoyed my time. Why did I just waste all that time stressing out about it? Right? I felt about it, especially, whatever. I've been there, I've done that where I've stressed out and I'm like, I just wasted an opportunity to have a good time because I was stressing out about what was next, what was coming up next. There's actually a beautiful, my husband learns with my son every Shabbos, and this past week they were learning this Parsha book that they enjoy, and it I wish I would have checked it out before share, but I don't remember exactly where it comes from, but it was a saying that said, the past is already gone, the future isn't here yet, and the present is only a blink of an eye. The past is gone. There's no point in stressing out about what happened. We can heal from it. We can, ask for help and process the information, process the experiences that we've been through, but we shouldn't stress about it. It is what it is. I'll speak to myself. If I stuck my foot in my mouth and I said the wrong thing, and okay, that was exactly what was meant to happen. Now I need to know what I'm meant to be doing right now to fix it. Beating myself up for what happened in the past, nicht gut. Future. The future, let's stress what's going to be. Where are we going to go? Are we going to have enough? Are we not enough? Is this going to work out? Is it not? There's no point. It hasn't come yet. We're not there yet. And the present, it's a blink of an eye. It's literally this very moment, and that's it. Does that make sense?
What's the future?
The future hasn't come yet. Well, it's not here yet. Okay, so the Rebbe said there are two options. Option number one is that until it happens, we're stressing. Then when everything turns out rosy and beautiful, and then, oh, why did we have to stress? And then we beat ourselves up for stressing, right? Now, option number two, alternatively, you can be strong in your trust and faith in Hashem that He will lead you on the proper path and fulfill all the blessings with which you have been bestowed. Afterwards, when you see the fulfillment of the blessings, you can tell yourself, see how well I handled myself by not worrying about matters over which there was no need for concern, right? So now we have this situation where we trusted in Hashem the first time. We said, okay, this intense situation is about to happen in my life, and it's all going to work out. Hashem's going to take care of us. It's all going to be beautiful and dandy. And then when it does work out, we say, yes, look how well I handled that. In a certain sense, that's how I feel about my gown. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't stressed out. I was like, okay, it is what it is. And I'm not going to walk in with pajamas. I know that for a fact, right? And so then when it works out, which the end of the story was, I came at 2:00, I put it on, it fit perfectly. Even if she would have been able to fix anything else, it needed nothing else fixed. And by crazy Hashgacha Pratis, I think with my trust in Hashem, Hashem also helped that my makeup worked out and my everything was just perfect. And I thank Hashem because I had the clarity to be like, okay, it's all gonna work out, and there's no point in stressing out about it. There you go. So, just checking. Okay, perfect. Okay, so those are the two options that the Rebbe gives in Igros Kodesh, volume 4, page 255. Okay, back to the main text. So now we're on the top of page 5. If a person places his trust in something other than Hashem, then Hashem removes his divine providence from him and leaves him in the hands of the entity in which he places his trust. Like,
let's mean it literally. It's a little extreme. It doesn't mean that literally, right? I remember reading somewhere that means that you have to experience it on your own. Because it can't be that Hashem leaves you on your own. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's a very good question. The question that was asked in the room was, is this literal? Does it make sense? Is it possible for Hashem to really, truly leave you? Let's say, chas v'shalom, that you're stressed out about parnasa and you're trusting that your boss is going to take care of you, and like you're putting your trust in that your boss is going to give you that paycheck exactly when you need it. So then what I'm saying is, fine, you have such trust in Hashem, you have such trust in your boss, that I'm going to leave you in the hands of your boss, right? So the question is that truly possible? Is that a raised hand? Oh, okay. So here, let's look here on the bottom where it says, if a person places his trust, Yep. If a person places his trust in something other than Hashem, then Hashem removes his divine providence from him, etc. Here it says, in Moreh Nevuchim, Rambam explains that when we are separated from Hashem, he is also separated from us, leaving us exposed to any evil that might befall us. This is the meaning of the pasuk, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be consumed, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. On that day, they will say, are these evils not befalling us because our God is not among us? It is clear that we are the cause of divine concealment, and that the partition that separates us from him is our own creation. So, 1 second, I know everyone's cringing. We're all nervous. I get it.
It really makes it sound like we're in control of our lives now. It really does. It puts the opposite way. It literally makes it sound like if something went wrong, it's my fault. I wasn't controlling my bitachon well enough. That's what it sounds like.
Well, 1 second.
It's weird. I'm not controlling my bitachon.
But what's interesting is that it's based on your bitachon and not on your doing whatever you're meant to be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you're helping.
No, I'm saying, I mean, I'll just put back in perspective. I think like
there's more to answer. I'm just saying there's more to answer. I just want to take a moment to process what we're saying so far. Yeah, go for it.
I'm saying when we're putting in extremities, 100%. I say I agree, it's not the right word, but I understand and I agree with what's being said. Then we have to like break it down practically that like we're not supposed to bang ourselves on the head that we're not having that right.
Yes.
Because that's not the way to bring bitachon.
Perfect.
So I think anytime that we're in a situation where like, gosh, now things aren't going to go well, we can only hyper focus on one aspect of our lack of bitachon and work on that.
Yes.
Because you can't change how you're completely feeling in an instant.
Correct. So can you just say the first part again? I just want to repeat it. So if I remember correctly, what you said the first part was that our way of dealing with what we just said here was if we're putting our trust in something else and therefore we set a separation, a boundary between us and Hashem, we create that concealment. By us putting our trust in something else, we create a separation, a concealment between Hashem's bracha and us. That said, in order to fix that concealment, having guilt, shame, beating ourselves up, being negative, I couldn't, why didn't I have bitachon? And you see, it's my fault. That doesn't bring any closeness. Instead, that's also putting it back on you. You're not meant to be trusting whether you did it or not, did it wrong, but you're meant to be now turning towards Hashem. This is not a self-deprecating, hit yourself over the head with it. It's more like, take a moment, stop what we're doing, turn around, and walk in the other direction. How do I face Hashem? How do I have more bitachon on Hashem to then break down that wall? Does that make sense? That's what brings down the concealment. Okay, so now let's continue reading because there's more good stuff in here. Okay, the Kli Yakar explains the meaning of the pasuk. If you treat my commandments with indifference, then I will treat you with indifference in my vengeance. In a similar vein, Hashem is saying that his response to the Jewish people's indifference will be his own indifference. In other words, and this is very, very crucial, what I'm about to say, the removal of Hashem's providence from a person who trusts in others rather than Hashem is not a punishment, but a natural consequence. So if I go and I grab my hand and I smack myself in the face hard, the pain on my face is a punishment from my hand? No, I did it. I smacked myself in the face. It's not a punishment. It's the natural consequence. If you smack yourself in the face, your face will hurt. If A plus B, or that one doesn't really work. A plus B equals C. There's no magic here. It is what it is. If we choose to put someone else in between our relationship with Hashem, and we trust in someone else instead of Hashem, then the natural consequence is that we're not going to be trusting in Hashem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think it's also like, at the end of the day, it's not like, I think like we're not looking at like Hashem is like the not good. Like we're getting kind of like Hashem and us. Like Hashem knows our struggle and knows your effort. So it's like if you struggle with bitachon and you put bitachon in some areas of your life, if you don't put bitachon in some areas, it's really hard for you. Not Hashem's like, okay, well now I'm gonna take away my problem. Now I'm not gonna like guide you, I'm not gonna do it, I'm gonna punish you. Like no, like Hashem knows your struggle and it's like, oh yeah, I see like really good. Like I think it sounds scary because it's like, well, we're working so hard in this great like not crazy in this world that and we're raised in a certain mentality of like, no, they're just like you don't have this mentality. So like to change your whole perspective, it takes time and it takes a lot. And not everyone is so some people it takes longer for some people's personality or their life or their challenges are harder. So like it's a harder process. I don't think it's like I don't know, I don't think to look at it like it's like this bad thing. I think it's just like we do as much as we can.
Beautiful. I love that.
Could I ask? I just want to understand what the concealment looks like. Like, there's a lot of people that they don't know that they should believe Hashem. They don't know that it's a concept. And so, when Hashem doesn't have presence in their life, like it's just now they're just on their own and they're at the mercy of everything of the world. Like, how does that differ from like from a person who like knows happy something? Like, what kind of like concealment does that person feel? I don't like everything's Hashem. So how?
Yes. So the question is, how does it work, especially the balance between someone who, let's say, is not from and doesn't even know that they could have bitachon, and so how does that even work with them? And then how does it work with a from person who does know that they should have bitachon?
This and theirs is not like Shem's also seeing them. So like, what is the concealment? Let's say when you talk something, even for a from person, like you just what you don't get the reference like what you want in abundance.
Very good question, and he actually answers it. We'll continue. Okay. A person's existence is dependent on Hashem's providence and kindness. When he chooses not to acknowledge this and places his trust in something other than Hashem, then Hashem, so to speak, responds in kind. If you do, quote, if you do not acknowledge this reality and you do not need me, then I will indeed remove my providence from you, and your destiny will be in that which you place your trust. This does not mean that Hashem removes his providence, which is your question, from the person. Rather, he obfuscates his involvement, which means to confuse, to obscure. He makes it unclear how he is involved in that person's life.
Makes it unclear.
It's clear for us.
Okay, what does that like practically mean?
I'll just put it this
If
way.
you compare your life to someone that doesn't have bitachon, I'm just trying to understand it.
What does it practically mean? That when this is a very very small example, and I'm just giving it to show it, not because of anything else, but just a small version of this. That like I really truly wasn't stressed out about my dress, and at the end of the day, it all worked out. And I said, "Wow, thank you, Hashem, it all worked out." And I was able to see how not only did my dress work out, the shell under my dress worked out by another crazy Hashgacha Pratis story. It's too long to tell in this thing. And my makeup totally worked out by Hashem miracle. I walked the day of the wedding, walked into a store, happened to be the person that was there was a makeup artist, and she told me exactly what to do, and it was absolutely beautiful. Like she wasn't there 5 minutes before, and she left 5 minutes after. Like I was able to see the clear revealed hand, as opposed to other times where I am stressed out. Many times I'm like making a program for living chassidus and I stress about it like a mad woman. And then it comes the moment, there's no one in the room by the time I start. And then look at this, the room is packed and I should have not stressed. But at the time I don't see the revealed clarity because I was so in my own stress. So what it's saying here, this does not mean that Hashem removes his providence. Every single person's life is Hashgacha Pratis. Every aspect of a person's life is Hashgacha Pratis. The question is, how much do you see it? Do you feel it revealed in your life? Do you feel Hashem's hand guiding you through every step of what you're going through? And that's the difference. And now we're going to read even more. Although everything in the world comes from God, there are two layers of divine providence. Number one, inner providence. In this greater layer, Hashem's involvement is not hidden in natural phenomenon, and his fingerprints are quite apparent. The person can detect a supernatural force guiding his life. external providence. Number 2, in this lower layer, Hashem is also the ultimate source because everything comes from Hashem. However, this is concealed by natural entrapments. The person cannot detect that Hashem is involved, and he feels as if he is leading his own destiny, a life of his own, subject to the whims of nature. This is because he has chosen to put his trust in fecal elements rather than in Hashem himself. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, to answer your question, there is no difference. Yes. It comes correct. It comes down to the user experience. It's a smoother interface to live your life with. That's exactly it. For anyone who doesn't know technology, that means like how easy it is to use like an app or a website or whatever. Sometimes it's like all the stuff is still on there, but it's so hard to decipher where to click the button as opposed to
the wrong place.
yes, or you click and it goes to the wrong place. Exactly. Or really, I don't know if you guys have heard, Chabad.org has a new app that they just launched. It's so good. It's so good. That's good user interface. So just a heads up right there. Okay, does that make sense? Does that answer where we're? Okay. I think we will, maybe we'll leave it here. Yeah, I think we're gonna leave it here if that's okay with you guys. Are you guys good with that? You want to continue? I don't. We actually didn't say if we're going till 9 or 9:30, so I don't. I guess we can do a vote. Would anyone like to continue till 9:30? Raise your hand. Okay. Would anyone like to end now at 9 and process what you have? Raise your hands. Okay. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it from 8 to 9. But okay. So I will give a bit of homework if you guys are up for it. Go through. You see on your page, it has a section that says bottom line.
Thank you.
Take a moment throughout the week, look at the bottom lines, and see how can you implement that in your life. When I started Shaar, I explained that there's Chachma, Bina, and Das. Chachma is just the knowledge. Bina is understanding it in a way that you're able to share with someone else, or understanding it in a way that you get it. You didn't just hear Michal teach it, you yourself get what's going on. And Das is connecting it to your life. It's saying, where in my life am I lacking some of this bitachon? Where in my life am I trusting something or someone else that I'm possibly having a not so pleasant user interface, that maybe I'm not seeing Hashem's hand in things. He's still taking care of me. He's still taking care of it, but I'm not feeling it. Where in my life is that? And I want to give you the homework to either journal about it, talk to a friend, talk to a mashpia, talk to somebody about it. If you want, find a chavrusa within the group or find a chavrusa out of the group, and set some time during the week to live with this bitachon. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. We are up to page 5. Thank you very much. My pleasure. I'm gonna stop the recording.